and also our special meeting on October 1st. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Oberst for the motion and Councillor McKeel for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Great. And now we have an opportunity on our agenda for public comments for items not on the agenda. I'm seeing that none have been brought to the attention of our communications coordinator, Saber Jewell. And Phyllis, was anything submitted online prior to this evening?
There was nothing, Mayor, please.
All righty. That moves us quickly to our business agenda. And we have a couple of opportunities tonight, something we really enjoy, which is getting to visit with our volunteer board and commission members and hear about their activities. So first up this evening, I would like to call our Historic Commission. And I see our staff member, Suzanne Duffner. And she's bringing with her the... Oh, good. Yeah, we've got a couple of members.
I told them we're first up. I was first up. So thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council members. My name is Suzanne Duffner. I'm the Community Economic Development Director for the City of Monmouth. Very excited to be here tonight with two of the members of the Monmouth Historic Commission. We have Ron Woodruff, who is the Vice Chair, and also Amy Lemko. They're both on the Historic Commission. So I have a few highlights that I'll share, and then I'll turn it over to them to talk about a couple specific things. So first off, we are a 7-member commission, and I'm excited to report that all of the seats are filled. Yay! We've gone through some ups and downs on getting those spaces filled, so that's a really good feeling. The other members that weren't able to be here tonight include Nita Wilson, she's our chair, Lori Albert, Beth Dykstra, Jim Mannion, and Marcus Axford is our newest commission member. So got a great mix of people with different skills and specialties and knowledge, so it leads to really good, vibrant discussions on historic preservation from a number of different perspectives. So enjoyed that. In terms of highlights of the commission over the last year, they were awarded a new certified local government grant in the amount of $7,700. And so those are the grant funds that we get on a 2-year basis to do the historic preservation work in Monmouth. And so we divide that up and stretch that as far as we can to work on some priority projects. So this go around we'll be doing some work with a historic consultant for some historic preservation research on the kind of the southwest neighborhood area around Cherry Lane Park. It's an area of our city that we haven't really done a lot of historic research on, but has some really rich past and history and stories to dive into. So while we kind of initially started down the path of just doing the regular, we call it a reconnaissance level survey, looking at the architecture strictly of the buildings, we thought with all of the interesting things that have happened there with the water reservoirs and the university influence, and believe it or not, there's a specific cherry tree variety that was created there that was featured in the Chicago World Fair called the Waterhouse Cherry that Amy's done some research on. So we're out to see if we can find one of those trees that might be left over from that time period. So we're going to broaden that out to more of what's called a historic context statement. And that will help, I think, guide future studies on historic buildings in that area. So that work is underway. We have a great consultant, Peter Meyer, that's worked with us in the past on the Evangelical Church and some other surveys, so has a good knowledge and also apparently a passion for historic trees. So hoping he can help us find out more about that cherry tree variety. We did have one historic alteration permit for the Monmouth Cultural Center. That's the Ross Theater Project restoration project that is grant funded with the Main Street Vitalization Grant. And that was to look at the Polk County Bank in particular is on a national register. And so that came before the commission recently for review. And I'll let Ron talk a little bit more about that in a minute here since he's really involved in that project. But that's been very exciting. We don't do a lot of actual development review because there's not a lot of properties that are specifically listed as historically significant on our protection list. So when we get those, it's always kind of fun to have a different task to do. So that's exciting work to see that going on. And then we also had several historic events. We have our May Historic Preservation Month activities that Amy can talk about, the Listen to a Legacy project. We had the first year for that. That was super exciting. And October, of course, History and Mystery. A number of you participated in that. So thank you for that fun evening that brings a lot of people to our downtown and helps support our businesses as well. So really fun night. We also had a visit from the State Historic Preservation Office. They'll do check-ins about every 3 years. And so we were due for a visit, and I'm happy to report that we didn't have any deficiencies. They did mention there's a couple things in our historic ordinance that we might want to clarify based on new laws. So the source of a future code change. But other than that, we got really good reviews and some good resources for how to move forward with some of these projects. So I don't know, Ron, did you want to mention a little bit about the theater project?
Yeah, the theater project, as you drive by, you see it's covered with plywood, and you see 2 cast iron columns that are kind of in front. Well, those cast iron columns were part of the original design, and in the past, they were all covered up with glass and plywood, so you couldn't really see what the building looked like historically. So we're exposing that, and then the transom windows high above were always there on the photo studio side. So we uncovered those, and those frames are, I think they're 6 lights per panel. There's 3 panels, and those are going to be all restored and installed back up top where they belong. And so it's going to be remarkable to see what was originally there. We don't have to remanufacture it. It's already there. And on the inside, we're doing a lot of demo work as far as taking apart, 50 years of covering up with plywood and plaster and everything else, and tearing out the old HVAC, sheet metal stuff that was part of in a hidden ceiling. So it's all laid bare, and it's wonderful to see the structure as it actually is. And so we're going to try to recover a lot of the existing structure and just highlight the brick walls rather than try to cover them up, and just kind of make it a really cool space. If you've been in Gilgamesh, it's going to be similar in spirit to that. Is a kind of an industrial look, but not too refined. And so that's kind of going to be a theme a little bit, but maybe a little bit more refined, because we have to have a really nice restaurant on one end, so it can't be too rustic. So we're in the permit process, and it's always, touch and go, because if we discover things on the site, you have to adjust what we think was on the plans, because there are no plans on the building except the building itself. That's the big plan. And as you uncover, you got to make adjustments because you find things that you didn't anticipate. So it's a slow go, but it's really going to be worth the effort. I think it's going to bring a total new life structure in this part of town after 5 o'clock. It's going to be remarkable, I think. So, and people look at the building and say black. Well, it's going to be about a 3 or 4 tone. So don't get impatient with the color combination quite yet. So it's a work in progress. Yeah.
Thank you. Amy, did you want to talk about the events a little bit? Yeah.
In May, we had the Listen to a Legacy project. It was based on a project that's run out of Canada, the Listen to a Life project. So we paired youth journalists with senior members in the community. Phyllis was one of our lovely members, and ran them through questions from personal background to regional history to national and global history, and just let them speak. It just happened that all of the youth and senior members were women, so it created just a very intimate atmosphere. There was a lot of really beautiful stories that came out of that. And then 2 of the journalists wrote nonfiction pieces, and I know at least one of them has submitted to the Listen to a Life contest. So hopefully they'll win, so that it'll draw more attention locally to doing it next year. We want to repeat this process every year, and possibly bring in the college or somebody to do more recording for the oral history. And we presented on that at the library and also at the History and Mystery information booth in Montmayor's. The History and Mystery itself has all new stories, and we started last year and this year creating a commemorative book to collect the new stories. They primarily come out of the historic newspaper that is online through one of the Oregon, I think Eugene has those archived. And we give booklets to the Monmouth Library and the Wu Library so that those are also available for other community researchers. Also trying to possibly create a similar event again this coming up May that to feature different kind of stories, since the October sort of lends itself to a particular tone of story. We want to do a sort of a mini version of that event for a bit more springtime. Some of the new stories this year were including youth history in Monmouth. The Ross Theater was, of course, heavily featured. Really wanting to focus on undertold stories, so bringing out a lot of diversity, women's history, youth history sort of events. Great. Thank you. Did you have any questions for us that we can answer?
Just a brief one, and that is, and you noted some of it in the history and mystery booklet there, but when you do the research on different parts of the town, well, where will we find your results? Where will we find the stories that you unearth and uncover? And sort of in addition to that, hopefully we can get some more information out about the renovation of the Ross Theater and some of those unique things that you noted. But it's great to have, but let's get it consumed, I guess. And maybe it's there and I just don't know where it is.
We'll tag team it. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, Counselor, and that we know not everybody could attend one night event sort of thing. And so we do have, and do a little shameless promotion, we do have some of these booklets available that folks can still pick those up. We're asking for a $5 suggested donation to cover the printing costs, because we were able, through Amy's guidance there, to find a place that could print those very economically. So we do bring those out to different events throughout the year and offer those. As Amy had mentioned, they're placed at the library and the archives and the senior center. So, but I think thinking about this more, like there's probably a place online, someplace to have these available as well. We can talk about that at one of our meetings. Yeah, because I think that's one thing I love about this is that it gets refreshed every year. And we try to take the feedback from the events, like that folks actually ask for more stories about youth and Halloween. And so Amy found some fun stories about pranks and Halloween time that happened in Monmouth, which were a little shocking. This happened in Monmouth. So yeah, if you have other ideas, we'd love to hear those as well.
I think that'd be good because there's a lot of sort of rich history and some of it significant and some of it not. But, for those that have been around for a while, you'd hate to see some of those memories slide away. Anywhere from Kreider's up the corner to Clay's Auto Parts. Those were big deals, years and years ago. And they're not any longer, but they ought to be remembered.
Yeah,
so anyway.
Reminded me, one of the things we talked about is maybe trying to film it in advance, or, find some way to have it in a video format as well. Might be a fun way to share and also use it in future years to kind of advertise about that. Because I agree that if you don't write it down or like have it someplace accessible, then it gets lost. So we don't want that to happen.
Counselor Opers?
This is a question for a booklet that you all have. My daughter was working at Polk County Museum for a while as a volunteer, and she came home from one of their sales with a book that is the history of all the street names in Monmouth and how they got them. And I wondered if that was something that you all had ever seen. And I know that it exists, would love to see it, etc. So just let me know and I'll try to dig it out again. My wife also found, believe it or not, a Monmouth history item on Amazon as a used book. And it's a different volume, but I have these at home and they're just kind of sitting there, and it occurs to me they might do better in other hands. So just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have one copy of the street names, working with Madeline Fisher. She did a little project to kind of look back at the history of how street names got their names in Monmouth and subdivision plats. So, but if you have extra copies, what we're trying to do is develop a partnership with the senior center, if there's maybe some display area that we can put some of this information and other objects or items on display so that more people have access to them. So that would be kind of in partnership with talking with some of the people out at the Polk County Museum if they have even some items that we can kind of interlibrary loan from another museum. So yeah, good stuff going there.
Counselor Selena Oliveros.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I really love the Historic Commission. It's so interesting and just so energetic. And I love that you have a booklet now and wondering, it sounds like you have one at Western at the library. And I don't know if maybe possibly sharing that with the school district. So the high schoolers, there is an Oregon history class that is offered at the high school, and it'd be great for students to learn about the history in Monmouth as well. But so thank you for your work.
Oh, I think that's a really good suggestion. That we reached out during kind of listen to the legacy, but I think we just got too late or too close in the year to year end with the school district to kind of formally participate and listen to a legacy. But that's a good reminder to be able to share some of our materials back to them as well for use. So yeah, thank you for that.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Ron, for the mentioning the color of the building, because as our historic architecture expert, I was going to ask what you thought of that. So thanks for bringing that up. It's great to have you, and Amy, your skills as a writer. It really is exciting to see everybody bringing their talents to this. So thank you. And thank you, Suzanne, for shepherding that. All right, and we have a second commission tonight, another very active group. I would like to invite Russ Cooper to come up and introduce the work of our Parks and Rec Board, along with our current chair and maybe the names of your other commission members who weren't able to join you tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually am just going to introduce Ryan, our new chair to the newly appointed to the Park and Rec Board. He is taking the reins from Mark Medell, who served in that position for, well, at least since 2017. And so I want to express my appreciation to Mark for his tenure and leadership. He's still on the board, but stepped down. So I'll turn it over to Ryan and let him tell about the activities.
Thank you. Ryan Knack, yeah, like Russ mentioned, newly appointed board chair. I did just see Mark actually at the volleyball game with high school. I asked if he'd be here and he said, no, he's served his time. So, but yes, I would also like to recognize his years of service. So we appreciate that. Newly appointed secretary, Mike Jewell, and then Diane Ostrom, Mark Medell, de Campos, Michelle Lumberas continue to serve as our other board members. We do have one vacancy open at this time. And then Councilor Lopez, of course, is our council liaison. And then Russ, of course, always there, keeping us on the straight and narrow. So yeah, just going to talk through various things we've been doing over the last year, starting with our review of the various things going on in the Monmouth Recreation Park Improvement Project. Construction of the parking lot improvements and walking paths was completed this last summer. The design for the bathroom and picnic pavilion is complete and ready for construction early next summer. We appreciate you guys kind of looking and overturning the Planning Commission's wetland impact variance decision, which allows us to move forward with construction of the gazebo and boardwalk. That will make that whole area just that much more cool to hang out with, hang out around. And I know a lot of people travel through that area. And I guess there's a pretty big bird watching contingent around, so that's kind of cool. So wetland impact permitting is still ongoing, but construction is planned for next summer. So that's kind of where we're at there, pending that decision, I guess. Design for the skate park landscaping, benches and picnic tables was completed. We anticipate this fall and early winter for completion of that. And then pickleball, which I guess was an overwhelming demand, was coming, but we heard there was some contention with the neighbors where the original site was the old tennis court. So it was suggested we move it to the old skate park location, which that is, if you haven't driven by recently, it's underway now, under construction, 2 courts going in, and then I guess fencing is going around that pretty soon. So that should be completed this fall. Moving on, so Main Street Park inventory, that was completed by a licensed arborist, just going through Main Street Park, kind of categorizing the trees into things that would need to be replaced due to tree health and or posing safety hazards. And so that kind of gave us an inventory and a roadmap for what we would need to do to keep those trees healthy and hazard-free moving forward in that park. Okay, and then the Monmouth Recreation Grant. So we kind of undertook, we realized that the previous year there was a low number of applicants for this, and so we sought to kind of streamline the process and reduce the barrier to entry to apply for the grant. We didn't want people to go look at it and go, oh wow, I don't want to do that because it's just too much. So we made some recommendations. I think we implemented those. We got some more applicants this year. We awarded 3 grants. Linda Bersani did a bike rodeo for students at MES. They had 85 fifth graders that participated in that. The Willamette Valley Community Action did a 3-day youth activities in Main Street Park, and they had 58 families from mostly Polk, but across Polk and Marion counties attend that. And then the Music in the Park series, if you guys ever see the kids walking around with art supplies. So the Ash Creek Arts Center and the Monmouth Business Association partnered to provide that. So that was 3 of the grants that we awarded this year. And so we hope to be able to continue that this next year and see what people come up with. The park reservation policy was reviewed. I don't have anything to say to that specifically, other than I think we're going to be submitting revisions for you guys to review prior to the spring so we can implement those before next summer. And we did have a small parks tour. I actually missed those because I was busy with softball all summer, but we went around to 6 different parks and reviewed state of equipment, play equipment, that kind of stuff. And then there was various landscaping things that were recommended. A lot of blackberries need to be trimmed back, stuff like that. So there is kind of a report. I imagine that was provided to the city at one point. So I won't go through that in detail, but yeah. And then plans for this upcoming year. Like I said, we would still like to offer the recreation grants and try to expand that for this upcoming year. We are meeting at our next board meeting in November with the WU Recreation Department staff to kind of explore partnering with them on opportunities. So it's kind of totally up in the air. I don't know if that means we're going to be utilizing their facilities or they want to utilize our parks more, or maybe a little both, who knows? So we'll see what comes out of that. And then one of the big ticket items we're looking at here is going into reviewing and recommending play equipment for the Monmouth Recreation Park, with in mind to make it like a very inclusive and accessible park as a part of the 2020 Parks Master Plan. So construction is planned for summer of 2027. That's going to be one we're going to need to seek grant monies, as the accessible equipment can be very expensive. So, yeah, that's kind of our plan for the upcoming year.
Thank you, Russ and Ryan.
Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Councilor Selena Salvero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much. You guys are doing so much in the parks area. The recreation park, I was just curious about the tennis courts. Is that where the play equipment is going to be, or are you resurfacing those tennis courts? What's your plan for that?
So in the Parks Master Plan, the tennis courts will stay exactly where they're at. They do need to be resurfaced and kind of get brought back to life. The play equipment is going to be between there and the parking lot. There's kind of the open space, open field there. That's where those would be located.
Thank you. That's perfect. We have some tennis enthusiasts in the family, so appreciate that.
Councilor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank you for including that inclusive playground equipment. It was brought to my attention when I was talking to a resident not too long ago, and I actually was a bit personally embarrassed that I never noticed that, and I have had people who have been confined in wheelchairs as important parts of my life. So it was I really applaud you. Nice job getting that in the plan to have for the future. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I'll also add that we're going to include maybe some parents or some community members that can help the board as kind of a resident experts on the topic to help us as we go through that process.
I can get somebody's name for you. Thanks.
Counselor Obers?
So just a few quickies. I have this vague recollection long ago that Nike was putting out grants for accessible playgrounds, and we didn't have an opportunity to do anything with that. Independence got all excited. I don't think they ever did anything with it. I don't know if there's any grant opportunities out there, just raising the question. Is it worth looking around for some grants?
So yeah, we will definitely be looking for grant opportunities. The one that you're referring to was a partnership, I believe, with MODA, and it would come around every maybe even every year. But what it ended up being is that there would be certain applicants that the pool would get narrowed down to like 4 or 5. And then it was you get your community involved with the most popular, most votes. And so we definitely have applied years, and I believe we actually were in the voting process one year, but we're not selected.
Okay, very good. And then
I think Dallas did end up
oh,
with
did they?
one. Yeah.
okay. I drove by the pickleball courts today, and they're blue. Looks really, really nice. And I have to confess, I was the one who brought Russ's attention to the fact that all across America, pickleball courts are driving people insane because of the sound of the ball on the paddle. And so I questioned putting pickleball courts right behind residences along Alberta. And I think this is a really nice solution. So looking forward to the fence going up and seeing people out there trying to play. I don't think I'll probably be mobile enough to be among them, but once I get the knee done.
So this is not official, but we're looking at maybe a ribbon cutting in the spring, and maybe there would be a friendly competition, staff council competition on the pickleball court. So you have time to warm up.
Okay, I think I'm already looking at Councilor Lopez here. Yeah.
I will be a scorekeeper, whatever the hell you do that's not playing. Counselor Lopez?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And, I'd just like to express my gratitude to the Parks and Rec Board. I thank you here as they share their work. And, it's really been my pleasure to be able to engage a little bit more closely with this board over the past year and a half or so. I think you hear in their words and as they report their activities back, a real resonance with our council values and the things that we've set out to do as a community. You hear looking for grant opportunities. You hear intentional engagement with community members that might be able to bring, insight and expertise into the room. And they're really a terrifically diverse, terrifically insightful group. They're also, a board that gets out and beats the pavement a little bit and goes and visits the parks, which I absolutely love. Every single individual had during those park visits has something to bring that, others may not notice. We all experience life, and especially engage in our public spaces in different ways. And so it's a wealth of expertise. We have one member who's been with the board for how long?
Knocking on 40 years.
And so not only do they have that depth of expertise and longevity, but also really fresh perspectives, right?
Knowledge is the thing.
It's pretty incredible. And so I just really wanted to take a moment to publicly thank them for their fantastic work and the way in which they serve this community.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
we appreciate it.
And subtle plug, there is an opening. You too can be part of the park board.
Counselor Carey, final question or comment?
Yeah, just quickly, nice job, nice work on the, the whole design there of Monmouth Recreation Park. That's going to be awesome. It's going to serve, the entire community, and it's going to, it links in with Independence as well, so that's a positive. And this is just a question on an update. Several years ago, there was a baseball hitting shed put in. Is that still there? Just to
That's still there.
yeah, and is that still used on a regular?
I used it for softball even. So I'm pretty sure the baseball, there's a pitching machine in there. There's nets in there. Yeah, they still use it.
And that was primarily CYS, I think.
Yeah, CYS uses that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, it's still going, that's the thing. And when you talked about new playground equipment, I make my annual push for musical and percussive sorts of things that, may drive the neighbors nuts, but they're a different type of recreation. I'm a psychomotor guy, but I really appreciate the musical aspect, the rhythmic aspect that would be very appealing to, a number of kids. So I'm just throwing it out there, and you guys got your own way of making selections, but
Well,
that's my
yeah,
2
and
bits.
there was, that video we watched, it kind of goes over the various types of things you can do, whether it's sensory or percussive or, encouraging, people to come together. And there's just, making it accessible, not just for physical limitations, but for, people on the spectrum or, just various things. So, yeah, just all inclusive.
All right, thank you, both of you. And that brings us to our third item. And apparently, yes, Library Director Chris Obrist, because it sounds like her group has been busy too. So we'll look at a library ordinance update.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, councilors. It's good to see you all. I'm here regarding the revision and update of Library Board Ordinance 1292. Staff recommends first reading of the revised Library Board Ordinance. In the background of this is the Library Board reviewed the enacting ordinance and discussed language they wanted updated. And to correct the ORS section, there was a couple numbers transposed, and so we need correct information in our ordinance. And I believe you all got copies of the revision and the red line. Alternatives are to adopt the revised ordinance, do not adopt the revised ordinance, or send it back for further revision, and there are no financial implications. Like, basically, it's updating information, or the wording to make it more correct and current, and again, that ORS number. Any questions?
Questions before I do a first reading?
I wanted to make the observation that as we rework the traffic safety into the Transportation Commission, we had old language that said things like, I see here in section 3 that this citizen board was to study things or develop things. And we also made this same sort of change of saying, not so much, maybe to, be assistance, a spare pair of hands for staff and to give advice, but not so much to go out and do the study and so on. So I think this is absolutely appropriate. The old language, I believe, put a little more on resident volunteers than maybe we really intended. And if we're going to follow the letter of what our ordinances say, it's important that the letters be right and the numbers in the right order. So thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions for you, we'd like to do the first reading of ordinance number 1292. 1416, sorry. 1416 is the new one, right? So staff report?
Yes.
Yeah, 1416 is the new one. And read that First reading of ordinance number 1416, an ordinance repealing chapter 24 of the Monmouth City Code and replacing it with the provisions of this ordinance relating to the Monmouth Library Board. Okay, thanks. So doesn't sound like there's much work for you to do. We'll do a second reading and adoption next time. So thanks, Chris. That brings us to a work session item, and we have found this beautiful city hall to be a place that people want to use for public use, and that's new to us. So we have staff working on a plan to make this available, and it sounds like our city manager, Rochelle Roden, will be presenting that. Rochelle?
Thank you, Mayor. So in the council strategic goals planning from last year, the council directed staff to create a public use plan for the community at City Hall. Phyllis has done most of the work on this. It's based on the city of Kaiser. And then after I started, I have a background with where my previous employment, we had a community center with a full service commercial kitchen, 2 floors. And so I'm aware of doing event rentals and what that can cause and how that works. And so we've been working on this. So some of the highlights basically is we've separated it between meeting reservations and event reservations. So it's going to be for this room and for the executive session in the back. So the meeting reservations would would be happening during regular business hours. And because of that, we don't want to have events in here while we're trying to perform our work. And so that's why we separated it into those 2 categories. So to reiterate, the meeting reservations are for business hours. The event reservations are for after 5 on weekends and 5 p.m. on weekdays and then also on weekends. We also set through 4 priority groups. So priority 1 would be Monmouth City Council and staff. Priority 2 would be Monmouth commissions and boards. Priority 3 would be other government agencies, education facilities, and state or federal elected officials. And then priority 4 would be for the private groups and the organizations, and that's when the rates come in. So we would not charge any rates for the first 3 priorities. The rates that we have assessed are to cover the administrative costs for this program, including the use of an event monitor for event reservations after hours. So we want to have someone here that's watching to make sure that the building is safe and that if any problems with the building, we can be contacted and take care of that. We also have a cleaning fee, which would be assessed based on the number of attendees that would be at the event, and also whether they were going to bring food or drink into the event. That would then trigger them having to pay a cleaning fee. And that's kind of the general gist of it. Do you have questions or do you have any further direction on how you would like us to proceed with this? I wasn't here for the strategic goal planning, so I just want to make sure that what we're bringing to you is what you were expecting would be offered to the community and to be able to use the People's House here. I know they're excited about the new City Hall, and so any feedback would be great, or questions?
Councilor Selena Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a question about the after-hours weekend rentals requiring a monitor. So is that a specific monitor? Is it a city staff member? Is it security? Like, what exactly does it mean, monitor? What?
It's actually an individual that would be here during the event. Currently, when the senior center has events after hours, they have a monitor. And so there's actually a couple of volunteers through the senior center that we would then pay to come in and monitor the events here.
Thank you. And it's just to oversee the event and to make sure everything's closed up and things like that. Is that what the purpose? Okay.
Yes, correct. Make sure they're not going in areas where they shouldn't be, but our access control is pretty locked down, so they probably can't. But there, it's a new building as well. What if something doesn't work properly? Having someone here just to make sure that everything is taken care of.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Councilor Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you expand a little bit about the first item in the policy that reads, no activities that conflict with local, state, or federal regulations may be conducted in City Hall meeting rooms? I'm curious to understand really kind of what this is getting at. I think I know, but I want to make certain that I understand it fully.
I'm hoping possibly that our wonderful city recorder might be able to expound on this. I don't know if this was brought forth from the Kaiser policy. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I
this
think
was
it
in
was
the
listed
Kaiser
in the city
policy.
of Kaiser's policy is just an overlying general statement.
Okay.
It was also reviewed by our city attorney
Okay.
before we presented it.
So I think that this, maybe intersects with First Amendment rights, right? Freedom of speech, and then also the state stance on freedom from discrimination and our own council's inclusivity resolution, right? Making this as available as possible under current law. Is my understanding correct? I just want to make sure that if this is something that we're going to set as policy, I could see this policy extending to things like the Parks Board talking about reserving parks, the library reserving those spaces. So I want to make certain that I fully understand this and that we get this right.
I completely understand, and I think we would like to do a little bit more research and come back to council with that, just to make sure that we have all of those considerations covered.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Counselor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to figure out, maybe I'm missing it in here. Is there a charge for the monitor to also come and be in the building after hours? Or is that $25 cover that as well?
So the rates that you see before you cover the administrative fees as well as the monitor. So it's built into that fee, and we try to keep it as affordable as possible and just cover the costs that we incur to make it affordable for residents.
Yes, Counselor Carey.
I think this is a very good start, and it's a complicated deal. At the university, we went through we got a manual that thick on facility use over there. And in reference to Councilor Lopez's concerns about that opening, that's likely boilerplate language that is only needed if necessary and would not be something that would be, it's my guess, but as you said, they're going to do a little more research on that. This is a wordsmith thing. I mean, when we did it at the university, rather than call it a monitor, which suggests looking over and monitoring, building manager might be a different term that would be a little, and then as we do that, I think we'd want to flesh out what those duties are, and are there any charges for the audiovisual equipment that would be utilized for a group, and who would, fortunately, we're just now getting figured out how to use this stuff here. Somebody comes in cold, they're going to be, we need to have that. So I guess that's a question. The other question I have is, for meeting setup, or be it a small group meeting or an event, who's going to do the setup? Both during the day and afterwards. I mean, who's going to set the tables? Who's going to set and everybody's looking at Phyllis.
Or Sabra.
Or Sabra. But we'd want to get that detailed, and then and I'm really not looking to charge any more money, but I think we need to make sure that this is not a loser. So if we're going to have to hire somebody that, is a building manager that's going to run the AV equipment and set the thing up, and do we have our costs covered? And one of the other things that is not, I didn't see noted, that might be a facility that we would just identify. I don't know that we charge for it, but like the patio, the plaza out here, perhaps the lobby, if somebody's going to use that for registration for an event that they might have. So, everything on this floor ought to be, sort of available. A good start, though. I mean, really good.
Thank you.
A good beginning.
if I can interject, we are not going to let people use the AV. The AV that is available is that TV back there. It can be plugged in, but it's not, they can't use this equipment. It's not best practices to have people that don't know the system use the equipment. It's a good way to ruin it real quick. So,
But that's why, for example, at the school district, if you want to do a meeting or have an event and you do want to use AV, we do charge to have someone there to run that for them. But that way it is an option, especially folks who nowadays, I mean, you kind of Zoom everything, right? It's Zoom meetings, but Zoom weddings and Zoom all kinds of things.
So that was one of the questions I wanted to know from the council, if you wanted to allow the audio visual equipment to be able to be rentable. It is a complicated system, and we are working through, we did a training and brought staff in to get that done. But if that's something that we want to offer, then we'll take a look at that and figure out what the options are and how we can offer that to the community.
I would say have it be an option if we can secure, make sure, but anytime someone rents, say we have to make sure our trained person will be able to be there, and if they can't, then it's no.
Yeah, it's a lot easier if it's a meeting during the day when staff is here as compared to on a weekend, and the monitor will have to be trained in the equipment, and it is pretty technical.
Counselor Ober.
I'm wondering about keeping the remote control cameras that we have in here as a separate piece that isn't available. Somebody wants to use the screen and connect through with cameras, that's a different piece. And I know when we have the transportation commission meetings at the police station, chief brings out the owl, which sits in the middle of the table and it knows who's talking and it looks at them. You know, and if we had that kind of equipment available here, so if somebody wanted to have a meeting in the back room and have coverage online, to be able to offer that option as, you know, so rather than everybody has to have a computer with a camera, and you know, make it flexible. But yeah, I sort of think that the full suite in here might be a little bit of a steep learning curve, and that we ought to reserve that for our fully trained and capable staff.
I think researching an owl or that type of what happens with our system is the audio gets fed in the back room, and so you got the visual and the audio, and you have to be signed into 3 different computers. Yeah. So I think if we can take a look at that, and I wanted to understand if you wanted to offer that, then we can take a look at what that equipment would be and be able, they could come in and set up a Zoom, access that. Okay, no problem. So we will research that and figure out costing now that I have direction from the council. Thank you.
Counselor McKeel.
Thank you. I was wondering if you would also include the kitchen, because if people are going to serve food, they might want to have that, which could be an additional cost if they want to use that.
So one of the reasons that we hadn't put that in there is because the access to the kitchen gives you access to the back office, which gives you access to upstairs, and it bypasses the access control. And so the thought was to not allow access to the kitchen, but they are able to bring food in and that type of thing. If that's something the council would also like us to look into, then I can research what it would be to fix that situation. But currently, if the access control had been done on the other side of the break room, it would be much easier. But because it's on this side, it allows access to the full building and upstairs.
Okay, Counselor.
You know, my sense is as you have it planned, I would suggest we start that way. If there's a demand for that, if people say, man, if we had a kitchen, we'd be here more often, then we could take a look at it. But let's not jump out and anticipate that. That'd be my 2 bits.
All right. That takes us to our reports. I don't have much for our mayor's report. I'm going to let you know that, hi, Zach. Oh, because I don't have my computer. Counselor Beltz online had comments.
Thank you. Sorry. One of the concerns that we had, one of the things that happened when we used to have open meeting space at Chariots was that certain organizations were able to bump us from our meeting space because they had more authority. We need to make it very clear if that is something that the city will do.
She's nodding at you, so thank you for that. All right, again, I'm not going to make much of a mayor's report. Our city manager has to get to Bend tonight to be at the League of Oregon Cities board meeting first thing. So I want to get her out of here as soon as possible. So I'm going to ask for very brief reports from our council representatives of boards and commissions.
Trees meets Thursday.
Arts and Culture Commission meets on Thursday as well.
And I have the library report, which is, they're going to bring the policy up. And, yes. And they are also exploring and changing their meetings so that they would be every other month. So that will be, I'll be bringing that up for consideration later. And also just check your website or the Facebook for the library because lots of really great things are coming up. I just want to bring up Saturday, November 9th is a presentation. This is Kalapuya Land presentation by Steph Littlebird. And there's also an estate planning seminar on Saturday, October 19th. Plus lots of book clubs and story times. So lots of things happening at the library.
Councilor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll allow the Parks and Rec Board report to stand on its own words. The Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance, their regularly scheduled meeting was pushed back this month to the 24th. So I will have a report from that entity later in the month.
All right, thank you. So that brings us to our city manager's report, including our strategic goal update and other information.
Thank you, Mayor. So on page 23 of your packet is the quarterly update for the council's strategic goals for your reference. I'd like to mention that we are currently working with Sarah Singer Wilson to try and schedule a 4 to 5 hour strategic goal update / refresh work session with the council and the management team in the January-February timeframe. So I'm currently working to get her availability, and then we'll be reaching out to the council to get your availability so that we can get that scheduled. In other updates, I'd like to update you on the trolley. So our third trolley that has been out of service due to a failure to the hybrid chassis, and then that company went out of business, and so it's kind of been a situation. But Justin here, he sent a demand letter, and so they have responded back, and they have found the parts, and they are going to be here within the next few weeks to do the installation and get that third trolley operational again. So we're very excited about that. In regards to ridership numbers, those have been off the charts. And so in September, we had an average daily ridership of 346 riders, which totaled for 10,043 riders in the month of September. In the first 2 weeks of October, we are averaging 394 riders per day. Let's see. The trolley storage building, the pad has been poured out behind Public Works. And so that building is scheduled to be constructed the first or second week of November. This trolley stop shelters, there's 8 stop shelters that are scheduled to arrive in January. They will be stored at out at Public Works, and then we will work to get those constructed and installed. There are 4 going in Monmouth and 4 going into the City of Independence at regular chariot stops and trolley stops. One of the things on October 28th and 29th, I, along with Kenna West, who's the city manager for the City of Independence, we will be attending the Oregon Public Transportation Conference in Seaside. Carter's actually going with me, and on Kenna's staff, Fred will be giving a presentation, as well as our consultant is coming down from Seattle, and it's called Hail the Monmouth and Independence Trolley. Which he does a great presentation, and we're very excited about it, but it's just, we're going to be, offering, we offer public transportation now, so we need to be involved in this type of conference. And Ken is here this evening because I'm riding with her over to the LOC conference tonight after the meeting. Yeah. In regards to the pickleball courts, you did receive your update, but one thing that did not get mentioned is that the library is going to have paddles and all the, that folks will need to rent to go be able to play the pickleball. And the actual discussion about having a competition with staff and council came up in our management meeting today, and everybody was very excited about that. So we can talk about that in the spring. Monmouth Avenue has now been paved as part of the STEAM project. So that was completed Friday and Saturday of last week. So that's completed. In regards to the climate action plan, so Wade put out a request for proposals. We received 8 proposals to complete a climate action plan. They ranged from anywhere from $68,000 to $300,000 to complete the plan, and $100,000 was about the average. With only having $25,000 budgeted, it's not possible for us to move forward with that. So we will continue to work with, staff will continue to work to see what kind of options we have, and we can also discuss it at the strategic goals refresh that we do with the council in January, February. The EV charging station is currently out of service, the one that we just put into the parking lot. Our inspector came over. We've been working on getting all of the inspections and building permits completed for the City Hall project, and we are very, very close. Very, very close. And that actually, there's some ADA changes that have to be changed on that. So we've taken it out of service to get those changes completed so that we can get our permit. Also this afternoon, Church in the Park application for a emergency shelter was submitted. So staff will be reviewing that for completeness. And then staff is hoping that at the November 19th council meeting, we'll bring it back as a work session item to talk about the HB 3395 process with the council. The library has a new story walk in Main Street Park, so that's exciting. And the library's Fall Fest was last weekend, and over 120 people attended. The very cool thing was that Public Works grew all the pumpkins that were brought, and so there were over 80 pumpkins that were grown by Public Works that were delivered, and participants could decorate the pumpkins. So it was a really cool event. The Friends of the Senior Center fundraiser at Grocery Outlet, which was a couple weeks ago. So it yielded $300 through the cash register, and then another 70 in donations. So Grocery Outlet rounded up to 500 from the 300, so it made a total of $570. The Senior Center will be hosting a Diversity 101 workshop, and this will be with Dr. Jacqueline Cares Hurley from Western Oregon University, who taught the Jedi in the Workplace program that many of the Monmouth staff and I attended as well. This will be a 2-part program. It'll be 4 hours a day, and Barbara is requesting that all of her volunteers attend this training. So we're excited about that. She's an excellent teacher. It was a great program, so we're very excited. And so we were going to open that up to anyone that would like to attend it. I mentioned the City Hall closeout, so I've been working. That has been a lot over the last few weeks. We have had Swinnerton here with subcontractors every day for the last 2 weeks. If you happen to notice, if you look up all of the bracing, you probably can't see them now, which is a good thing, because before you could see them, they had originally put putty in there, and we asked for them to change that. So they came in and they drilled plugs out of the wood and pulled all of that out and put the plugs in so that hopefully, well, there you go. So very excited to see that. And yeah, and they've been, yeah, it's been fantastic. So we're really hoping that we're going to get our building permit in the next couple of days and then finish the punch list by next Friday and be officially completed with the project. Yeah. Let's see. And then the only other thing I have is that I'll be at the LOC conference now until Saturday. But if you need to get a hold of me, please feel free to contact me. I will have my cell phone. So that's it.
We knew that hiring someone who is a capital projects manager for the tribe would actually come in handy, that somebody who could step on that. So that brings us to, did you have a question for her first? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you engage in different, oh, and there's a chair on the screen. Wow, it's great. As you engage in different spaces and these different conferences regarding transportation, I'd encourage and request that you look for ways or methodologies to estimate economic impact from this ridership. That ridership data is staggering in a positive way. And I'd like to find a way to quantify its impact on our community in those other forms as well. So I'm sure someone's thought it up. It's beyond my skill here, but we can not reinvent the wheel, hopefully, and still get some way to divine some numbers out of it.
All right, and that brings us to council comments and announcements. And Councillor McKeel.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just would like to first say that it's Indigenous Peoples Week this week, October 14th to the 18th. So maybe we can be reading and educating. And I got this hat from a resident of Monmouth. See if I can turn that around correctly. And just want to remind everybody to vote by November 5th. And I'll take it off now because I'll start getting hot. Thank you.
Including using the new ballot box, which is right outside the back of our building. So, Councillor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to extend thanks to Councillor McKeel for that reminder to vote. My comments, are tied to voting as well, and if your families are anything like mine, we're talking a lot about the upcoming election and voting and the importance of that level of civic engagement, around the dinner table nightly. And, I'd like to take a moment to address a significant concern I have around the local transparency of local elected office in this upcoming election. As a community, we've historically benefited from resources that help to inform voters about their choices. But this year, I feel as if many of those resources are lacking or non-existent. I do recognize that we have a number of individuals here in the room tonight that are running for local elected office, and I thank them for being here and for their engagement. In previous elections, the Monmouth Independence Chamber of Commerce, in collaboration with Western Oregon University, hosted a candidate forum right here in Monmouth that covered all local elections here in Polk County. It provided an invaluable opportunity for the community to hear directly from those running for office, and it strengthened the elected officials that ultimately attained office through that process. This was a well-attended event, and unfortunately, it hasn't happened in a number of years. KMUZ also used to conduct interviews with Monmouth City candidates. They did. Did they this time? Okay, I missed them. I'm thankful that that's occurring. I knew that it occurred for Independence. I hadn't caught the Monmouth ones. And the Itemizer Observer hasn't published candidate profiles, at least not that I've seen this year. Okay. So I do want to be clear, though. I'm not here to cast blame. This isn't at the hands of these organizations. This is at the hands of every resident of Monmouth and of Polk County to ask for and demand for this kind of engagement, this kind of transparency. So as we all leave here tonight, I'm going to ask you all to go out and remember how we feel right now. And in the future, demand that our public institutions, not just the city, uphold that commitment to make sure that we are a well-informed, well-engaged city. These organizations serve our community in important ways, and I believe that we all can and should do better together. I urge everyone to voice their desire for more accessible information about our candidates and elections because it's crucial to the health of our city and to our democracy. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Yes, it is sad when people ask, gee, how do I find out? And, we're reliant on sending them to social media or to websites and getting information that way. So thank you. Good reminder. We will advocate for that. Anything else? Counselor Salinas Oliveros?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to give a shout out to the Public Works Department. I've met some of the nicest people this last few weeks. They're working right outside my house and trying to make sure a pole doesn't fall, which is really considerate. They're very thoughtful and they're just really nice group and very knowledgeable. So I'm sure they're going to take care of whatever is out there. But I just wanted to give a shout out to them.
And I would like to read the land acknowledgement.
And then Counselor Oberst for a final comment.
Three quick things. If we take that trolley count that you gave us for so far this month, and it continues all month, we're going to have over 12,000 riders on the trolley for the month of October. That's 12,000 trips that didn't get taken by car, I assume. So I guess some of them would have been by foot, but that's good. Again, if you haven't been to see the work on Church Street, you should. They've almost completed, very close to the south side of Church Street between the highway and MES. And the speed with which they're moving on the north side is astounding. They just started last week tearing out old sidewalk, and almost all the concrete's down for the first 2.5, 3 blocks anyway. There's still a fair amount of work to be done, but they're just flying along. It's amazing to see how fast they're getting that thing put together, and high quality work, really good. You know, I've gone and had a look, and these folks know concrete. I'll say that they have really done a good job. And yeah, I guess that's all I've got. I just wanted to be sure to touch on those two things. So thank you.
All right, Counselor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We would like to acknowledge the indigenous tribes and bands have been on the lands here and throughout Oregon since time immemorial. It is not lost on us that the Willamette Treaty forcibly removed these peoples from their homelands in 1855 to 1856, the year that the city of Monmouth was founded. We recognize the pre-existing and continued sovereignty of the federally recognized tribes that are a vibrant part of this region today, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, and thank them for sharing their perspective on how we might care for one another and the land so it can take care of us. We commit to engaging in a respectful and successful partnership as stewards of these lands. Thank you.
An appropriate ending to the Indigenous Peoples Week meetings. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Thank you, Counselor Lopez. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Counselor Bells, thanks for joining us. I'm sorry I didn't look to see if you had any final comments. You're okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned.